Let's talk a little bit about some strategies to deal with it. How important, in your estimation, is meditation and exercise during this period of time?
Man, it is crucial in so many different ways, man. And the reason it is that way is not because, a lot of times there's a lot of, pop science about the importance of exercise and the importance of meditation. But really, if you look down into the research, there are some significant transformations that happen in your brain and the way that you see the world, right? So meditation has this ability to free you from some things. It frees you from your past, because a lot of times when people are stressed, they're stressed about what happened in the past and fear of taking that past into the future. And it takes away the illusions. In a lot of ways, when you were put into a space to where you are constantly worrying about what will happen and relating it to the worst of what has happened, then you lose two things. One is you lose the moment, and two is you lose your peace, right? And so what the goal is how do you get people to be peaceful? Because when they're at peace, they're flexible, they're adaptable, they're able to engage in these type of situations that really knock you kind of off your chair if you're not prepared for it. Meditation, for me personally, I always like to represent a story that was my own, because this is almost better than science because I've personally experienced it. But when I was in college, what I did was I filled out a form. And in the form, I would say I woke up at this time. I did my meditation. I did my gratitudes. It asked me if I ate. And then it asked me on a scale of 1 to 5, how healthy did I eat? Then it asked if I exercise on a scale of 1 to 5, how intense or how good was the exercise? It asked, do you know what your top 3 tasks are? And it kind of went through the whole day. And I would fill that out, and I did it for 40 days. It would populate onto an Excel sheet. And anything that was a good answer, like I ate healthy, would be green. Anything that was mediocre would be yellow. And anything bad would be red. So 40 days go by, I take a look at it. And what I did was I started to sort. And I sorted to see which one action created the most green in my day. The first one was waking up early. When I would sort it by waking up early, all the days that I woke up early, there was more green throughout the day. The second one was meditation. And what's interesting is on the days that I didn't wake up early, if I meditated, there'd be more green throughout the day. What happens when you meditate is you let go of the worries from the past. And when you let go from the worries of the past, it inclines you to be able to be focused on what you have to focus on right now. And this is why I recommend to my clients calm, headspace, or just closing their eyes and taking deep breaths 5 times.
What does meditation look like? I've heard a lot of different techniques. What would that look like if someone were to meditate for the first time?
You know what? It's funny, man. I think the problem with meditation is people are imagining, kind of just sitting out and oming, which is a form of meditation. There's some really powerful ones that you can do. But ultimately what meditation is becoming present. That's it. There is no specific definition of what it looks like. If you're present to the moment, if you're letting go of your worries of the past, and if you're not concerning yourself with the future, then you're in a meditative state. Another example in research, they call it flow. Have you ever played an instrument so intensely, or heard a song that you love so much, or played a sport and you were so engaged, or you were painting and you felt so just raptured from time? What that is called is flow. It's a deep form of intrinsic motivation where you are so engaged in the moment, finding so much satisfaction in the space that you forget about everything else that's going on in your life. Meditation is an opportunity to get to flow. It doesn't mean you have to have that ecstatic feeling, but what happens is your process to getting to that place where you're only in the moment. When you're in the moment, then you can deal with what's in the moment. But when you're in your mind, you're going to fumble on trying to deal with what's in the moment.
Right. That makes sense. I've heard also it's about focusing on your breathing, right? So you sit there, very quiet state, and you're just focusing on the breaths in and out.
Yep. Think of it as a gateway. The less that you define it, the less inclined you are to judge if you're doing it right or wrong. And that's the problem. Most people are judging, am I meditating? And as soon as you ask that question, you kind of lost the meditation. All it is just the breathing, the closing your eyes, the putting of the tips of your fingers together is just to get you to feel, to notice your senses, to notice your breath. And the reason that we want you to notice those things is not because they are important, but to stop you from noticing what I have to do tomorrow. What tasks will I pull in ends meet this week? Like when you are worried about those things, that's when you can't get to presence. So the breathing is a form. It's a gateway to get into that meditative state. The closing your eyes or the staring at one object and turning off everything else. It's the turning off of everything else that's more important than the specific thing that you're doing.
So you mentioned in your early experience, you had a chart where you could look at color code and understand the green, the yellow, the red, and the green, it was you're waking up earlier, and then you also had the meditation as part of the routine. So you can talk to us about the importance of creating a routine as you think about the importance of meditation and exercise.
Right.
How does routine fit into that recipe for success?
You know, especially now more than ever, routine is the most important thing. When I had work, I would go to work at this time, right? I'd go to my break. After my break, I'd then go back to work. Then I'd have my lunch. Then I'd be back at work, and then I'd have the rest of my night. And then I can focus on doing all the things I need to do at night or during my break or during lunch, right? The problem is now that we're all in quarantine, this stay-at-home order has put us in place to where our routines are completely different. We actually don't have a routine. And a lot of people are actually struggling with working extra hours because they're not aware of the delineation between work and life. They're now squeezed into the same space. Routine is your mind's ability to compartmentalize your different selves. And when you create a routine, a couple things happen. One is it frees your brain from having to worry what's next or think about what's next. Because the moment that you think about what's next, you lose the cognitive space to work on what you need to do right now. So building a routine is one of the most important things. And I'm actually doing a course on that for people who are going through quarantine. How do you build a routine for your day? And we start off with your morning. Your morning routine is the most important routine. If you do not have a system for your morning, then your day is going to be it's going to be chaotic. So you build a morning routine. Then from there, you find out what you have to do for the day. And I always recommend the sandwich technique. You go to sleep with a night routine. One of the most powerful things that I say is that if you can connect your yesterday's intentions with your intentions today, then you're a powerful person. If you can connect today's intentions with the intentions of tomorrow, you're extremely powerful. If you can connect all three, you're a superhero. To be able to have your intentions set from yesterday, today, till tomorrow, you can actually change the world. And that's why routine is such an important and integral part of you being able to be successful, because you can actually build upon each other and have a consistent film of integrity tied through yourself.
So, I reflect on the importance of, going through meditation and exercise and trying to create some semblance of order, of routine.
Right.
And then we get to the sticky subject called relationships, and whether
Right.
it's relationships outside the home or in the home. We're now in quarantine and
Mm-hmm.
really forced for the first time to be around people in a different way, right?
Right.
If you're having problems, it's easy to leave for the work for the day and be on with your day and get really distracted with everything you're doing. And then you're coming back home and maybe there's some surface interaction, but now we're kind of forced to go a little deeper.
Right.
And while it's important to build new relationships, which I'd like to explore in a second, or dig deeper into ones that you already have, how do you navigate some of those sticking points where people are feeling just completely stressed out,
Right.
lost their job, not sure how they're going to pay their bills, even though I know the government's come back with some relief packages. A lot of that really hasn't found its way in the hands of Americans that have to pay bills.
Mm-hmm.
And so now their credit ratings looking to get rocked, and who knows if they can afford their mortgage. So all that adds up into even a more stressful situation with maybe relationships that are somewhat fractured. So how can people step back and sort of think about and manage it and create strategies
Right.
to deal with that and be mindful?
Yeah, I think it's such a, I think I used this quote last time we spoke. I said, for every 1,000 hackings at the leaves of evil, there's one chop at the root. This pandemic has caused a bunch of leaves of stress, of anxiety, right? And focusing on the root is really what makes it easier to kind of fix those leaves. And the reason that that's so important is when you tie it to relationships. I mean, I love that we started off with meditation. When we start off with meditation, what happens is we're not worried about the past and we're not worried about the future. Those illusions kind of dissipate a little bit. And again, with exercise, one of the things that's so powerful about exercise is that when you exercise, you're sending more oxygen to your brain, to your body. You're changing your entire physiology, which increases your tolerance levels, right? So as your tolerance levels go up, you become more flexible, you become more resilient, right? So you have those two right there. That's in the tool belt, my meditation and my exercise, which all of a sudden opens up my cognition so that I can work more from my prefrontal cortex, which is my rational mind, versus my limbic system, which is fight or flight all the time, because you have peace. Then you look at the relationships and you say, okay, now that I understand where I'm at and I've honored my space, I can now look to honor and respect and understand the person that I'm with, because it's a new dynamic. And there's going to be chaos at first, and it's going to be hard to understand how to maneuver and communicate with this person. But once you have tended to yourself, you have more of an ability to tend to another person. And imagine if that person too is doing the work mentally and emotionally and physically so that they can tend to you. All of a sudden you have two people that are looking for a solution that are just trying to get the other person to stop doing what's annoying them, right?
Right. So how then, if you're able to achieve that and you're able to become mindful and apply those strategies, yet within the same household, the person that you're dealing with hasn't become more mindful or thoughtful or employing the strategies of exercise and meditation, what do you do in that circumstance where you don't really have a partner to dance with?
Right. No, it's a great point. First thing I say is you have a sheet of paper. On one side, you're going to write everything that you can control. On the other side, you're going to write everything you can't control, right? Same thing we talked about. When you have that, you start to realize that if I spend my time complaining about things that are out of my control, I'm harming myself. You want to tear what you can't control and you want to throw it away. You want to burn it. And then you focus on what you can control. At the end of the day, you know, when I'm working with some of my clients, I tell them, hey, you're in a pressure cooker right now. This pandemic is a pressure cooker because
Right.
now all of a sudden, not only do you have the stresses of work, they are now pressed into your house and you have childcare and you have all these issues that are now just pressed into the moment and you are under high stress. But if we look to nature, nature teaches us some things about stress. When I'm experiencing resistance in the gym, my muscles grow. I have to break down my muscles for them to grow. If I was to be afraid of pain and soreness, then I wouldn't go to the gym. But because I understand the value of it, I engage in exercising. So I'm not afraid of the gym as much as I would be if all I thought that it was a torture chamber. In the same way, when you look at gold, it takes fire to purify gold. For diamond, it takes pressure. In the same way, this is an opportunity for us to collapse under the pressure or to understand that this is a perfect opportunity for us to evolve despite the circumstances around us in the world and even those that are in our house. And if we take this internal responsibility to not say he said, she said, if only they did this, then I'd be happy. If we take that responsibility for ourselves, that pressure cooker will have us come out of this as better human beings.
Yeah, I like that a lot, and I think those are really important things to consider in this day and age because I think a lot of people struggle and they absolutely live in the moment. They live with the sort of the monkey brain, if you will,
Right.
and you know it's the quick reaction, it's the emotion, it's the instant stimulus. Which you know TikTok is the reason it's so successful is it gives you 10-second hits of adrenaline
Right.
and
Right.
dopamine, and I think our brains have sort of been rewired, if you will, with current media, with phones, with sort of instant gratification. And certainly relationships don't work on that level. It really works on real connected, deep meaning conversation
So
to
true.
really navigate through some of these challenges and really trying to understand, kind of getting the moccasins of the person you're walking with, right? And understand how they're experiencing it and feeling it and trying to keep what I'd call a 30,000 foot perspective. So
Yeah.
as we think about, transitioning from the home back to work, people have to work from home, and this is a big stressor. I've read where moms have to take their kids through the school lessons while they're working.
Mhm.
Husband's also there while he's working, and you got this dynamic where everybody's on top of each other. What are some strategies people can think about to
Hmm.
separate homework life, especially in the COVID times?
Right. I think this kind of goes back to routines in a lot of ways. One of the most powerful ways to build self-confidence is to build integrity. And integrity pretty much is if I say I'll do a thing, I'll do it. And if I say I'll do a thing, I'll do it, makes you feel confident in your word. And in a lot of ways, we are our words. And so when you can schedule your routine, this is my work time, this is my playtime. When you're able to do that, you put yourself in a place where you can compartmentalize your mind. However, there are some people who are engaging, just like you said, in a situation where they're working while at the same time in the back of the corner of their eye, they're looking to their son or daughter doing their homework. So they have to kind of multitask their brains. What I say about those people is it's okay. You're not alone. This is this is abnormal, right? And it's normal for people to experience this in this abnormal time. And I think grace is one of the most important things. When I'm working with organizations, I just spoke with a couple companies on Thursday via webinar, and what we were talking about was give massive flexibility to your employees right now. Shift policies as necessary, because if you think that it's going to be, work as normal, it's not. And all that will do is add stress. And when they're stressed, they become disengaged. And if they become disengaged, they become frustrated and possibly resentful towards the employer, because you can't micromanage your employees under such a circumstance, right? Really, this is a huge time. When I speak to employers here, is that your job is to really create a space. It's almost at a therapist level right now, because people are really afraid of what it's going to look like in reentry. If reentry happens, and when it does happen, will I have a job? And can I manage what's happening right now? And am I doing enough? High importance that employers are constantly communicating with their employees, constantly giving them a sense of support, encouraging them, saying it's okay, right? Yes, you can have your meetings more consistently. You don't need to micromanage. Empower people, spotlight people that are doing well, talk about your culture, put yourself into a space to where these people that are working from home feel safe to be able to manage their job and their family, right? It's extremely important, because it's very difficult. It's overwhelming, and it will definitely cause some resentment if people don't feel that they have that flexibility and autonomy.
No, that's a good point. So let's transition to the whole business aspect. What's the importance, I guess, of culture when it comes to working from home, and how does a company really maintain its corporate culture and how they think, because it's one thing to be working at the office, they have human resources, and there's a whole, sort of dynamic in their culture that's easily supportable because everybody's there, they're present, everybody's held accountable, they have their slogans or sayings or whatnot. But now you're at home. How does a company really keep its this sort of sense of identity, one? And then the reality is there's going to be some people let go, and that percolates through the body politic of a company. So to me, you got a lot of dynamics. As a boss, you can have 30 people out in the field now because they can't come in the office, but because of the economics, maybe you have to let go of some, but yet still maintain a sense of order, camaraderie, moving forward, right? And the whole culture aspect. So I know I've sort of I've sort of dumped in a lot of questions, but in essence,
that's great.
How do you maintain a culture for those that still have a job, and then while you're letting people go, those that remain can still have the confidence?
Right. There's a quote that says that culture eats strategy for lunch. And there are two types of culture. There's a culture that's created by the team, by the organization themselves, and then there's a culture that's created unconsciously, right? If you don't raise your child well, your child will still have certain characteristics. If you do, they'll have other characteristics. So culture is inert. It's either positive or negative, depending on what environment is creating it. My work prior to this, before this even happened, this pandemic was here, I was working with companies to help build their culture, because even when they had all the facilities in place and the structure and the system and the slogans and everything, the culture was falling apart. Why? Because it wasn't believed in, right? Why? Because it wasn't internalized. It wasn't embodied. We knew it, but we didn't embody it. My research was talking about the importance of values. When you know what your values are, and I don't say it in a cliche way, when you know your values, where you know what the definition is of the values, and you know what the personification is, the behaviors of what that value looks like and doesn't look like, then it's in an embodied state, and then it becomes a part of who you are, your character. Same thing happens with an organization. When you are not clear on what your company values are, and you do not know what their definitions are, you do not know how they're shared among the departments, and you don't know how they are personified, both good and bad, then you do not have a strong culture. And so what happens is you take that and couple it with being at home, having people working from home, and some people who are furloughed. The chaos is evident. It's right there. It's right in front of your face. How do I manage to keep these people connected and engaged right now? Culture is the glue for an organization. And in these type of times, the first thing to do is to find out what our values are as an organization. And I mean, sit down. Yes, you have your list that you worked with your consultant, but I mean, it is a driver to know what the heart and soul of your organization is, because that's what's going to motivate the people that you're working with to be able to be engaged. In research, there's something for intrinsic motivation, as I was talking about, that internalized motivation. What is required are three things. One is autonomy. I need the freedom to move, right? Don't micromanage me. Give me autonomy. Mastery. I need to feel that I can grow and become better. I have to feel that there's an upward trend. And the last is purpose and relatedness. I need to be tied to something bigger than myself. That's where values come in. We're really trying
powerful. Can you repeat those again?
Autonomy. It's your ability to have the freedom to choose, your ability to self-determine, right? Then after that, you have this sense of mastery. The fact that I can grow, I can achieve, I can become better. And then the last is purpose and relatedness. I need to be related to a purpose that's higher and bigger than myself. You see, when we're tied to something bigger than ourselves, we're more engaged. It's just natural because we feel a part of the thing. When we feel a part of a thing, we work not just for ourselves and not just to our limits, but we actually go a little bit further because we care. We're willing to take a lower pay because we believe so much in what it is that we're doing. If these things are not being cultivated in an organization, the organization will falter when such things as pandemics come in. And so really as employers, what you want to be thinking is, what are our values and what do they look like? And once we have what they look like, what would it look like specifically in this situation? I talk from a global to a contextual to a situational space. Globally, these are our values. In the context of this pandemic, this is what we want people to feel. And these are specific situations in which we can have those values lived out. That type of understanding, that type of funnel perspective is what empowers you to be able to create a strong culture of engagement. Because then you'll say, okay, if our value is community, then we have to be reaching out on a more consistent level. And since we define community as familial, that means that it's not just in work. Okay, so since that's our value in a situation, what we can do is we can have, we're going to offer a yoga session or a meditation session online that's going to be done. We're going to hire somebody to come in and do that. You see, what happens is it goes from that outside to that inside to that actionable. That's when it's embodied. And that's what's one of the most important things. And a lot of organizations, both in pandemic and outside of pandemic, don't have that.
No, they don't. I think if they did have that, it'd be a force multiplier, not only for their business,
Absolutely.
but the energy and the focus and the work product from the employees for sure. So if you're a boss of 500 people now that have had to move outside the office, and now you're still trying to manage the objectives, the strategies, and on your to-do list, there's a bazillion things you have to get done to close on deals or
Yeah.
to design and finish products, whatever it may be. How do you create a culture to strengthen the employee experience with the company and to ensure you have a strong culture? How do you create that culture working from home if you're that boss, and how do you strengthen it?
Right.
What are some things they can employ?
Absolutely. I would say first and foremost, no matter what the values are within the culture, transparency is one of the biggest things. Constant communication is another big thing. Communication outside of specific work information is a big thing. What happens is you have to double down on your relationship with the people, right? Because it's no longer just the paycheck, because they don't even know if the paycheck's going to be there, right? They don't know what the future looks like. They don't even know if the paycheck's there, what they're going to be experiencing, right? How the business is going to do. As a boss, constantly communicating, checking in with your employees, finding, like I said, spotlighting other ambassadors, other employees who are super engaged. Give them responsibility to touch and reach out to the other employees. If you have furloughed employees, you need to be sending messages out to them as well, because they're in terror right now about whether things are going to work or not. So your constant ability to contact and touch them is really what makes them feel a little bit safe. These are the facts. This is where we're at. This is where we're not at. That's why it's important with the pandemic. I want to hear what the facts are, right? Where are things? Because then I can contextualize what it means in my life, and I can set my expectations. And that's really what's important. We want to be able to contextualize the situation, feel that we're being cared for, and then from there, set our expectations. Because if our expectations are set properly, then we're not going to be blindsided by new information. And that's why I
Right. And
think
that's really,
communication
really
is
important.
huge.
Yeah. So how important is it to stay connected to furloughed employees?
Yeah, man. I think this, like I said, man, that this is, there's two angles that we have to look at it. The importance of staying connected with them is, like I said, they're in a thing called the valley of despair. They're in a space where they don't know what's going to happen. They are completely out of control. They're told that they cannot work at all. And so there's this space of, will I be there? Will I not? And so really kind of just attending to the emotional stress of that. As a boss, as an employee that isn't furloughed, is to really kind of go, what would I feel if I was in that situation? That's where empathy comes in. That's where sympathy comes in. Then you speak from that space, and you tend and speak to what it is that you would want to hear about in order to feel safe and feel okay. Another thing that happens is when furloughed employees come back, that's going to be a very interesting dynamic. You have people who were employed still, who weren't furloughed, who may have this sense of survivor's guilt.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was picked, why were they taken out? Or it could be a feeling of superiority. As a boss, you have to make sure that you nip that in the bud as quickly as possible. Don't feel guilty you're here because you're here, right? They're coming back. Secondarily, don't be haughty. Don't act like you have some higher skill set. They were furloughed, they were not. You come in and you bring them in and make them feel that they were just as much of the team as they were before this all happened.
That's really important because I could imagine post-COVID, when we're all back, that could create some really
Absolutely.
unhealthy dynamics possibly. So how does a boss keep his employees motivated working from home? Because there's, Lord knows, there's so many distractions within
Right.
a given home in today's age. What practical things can employees, or bosses, I should say, supervisors do to keep those employees highly motivated?
Right. Words of affirmation are huge, man. I would actually, let's take a step back. This is more of a kind of EQ than an IQ, but the 5 love languages, I use this with even my clients. I use this with people that I'm employing. Find out what the love languages are of the people that you work with and lavish them with that love, right? What happens is if a person appreciates, words of affirmations, or they appreciate gifts, or they appreciate quality time, those can all be managed even within the workspace. You can affirm somebody publicly on a minutes email that you send out, or on your Zoom meeting. That's words of affirmation. Quality time. Hey, I want to have one-on-one just to check on you and see how you're doing both in work and in life, right? That's okay. We're getting that quality time. Rewards. Hey, here's a bonus for anybody you did such a great job with this. Thanks for exemplifying these values. So really kind of the best thing to do is to communicate and make these people feel good despite the situation that they're in, right? Another thing that I would recommend too is education, training. This is a perfect time to train your employees. So you can put together self-development programs. You can hire consultants, right, to be able to engage and provide new career building information. And what happens is you can turn this bad situation into a huge opportunity. If I do something good for somebody that wouldn't have happened had this bad thing not happened, you help them reframe the narrative, right? If I'm stuck at home, my kids are in the other room, and I'm stressing about work, but I'm also getting this free training for developing a skill that is important for my future advancement at this company or another company, I actually start to see the glass is not even half empty. It's at least halfway, and maybe even half full. That is how you shift people's perspectives, especially when they're feeling what they're feeling right now.
Yeah, that's really important. The whole idea of the glass half empty, half full, really relates to certainly how we see things and having positive emotions that we're reflecting on, right? And it seems to me that in this time, when we think about, whether it be, work fitness and performance at work, it really sort of starts at emotional fitness level, where we're really making sure we're protecting our thoughts, our minds, what we focus on, how we react, and how we process the stress and the stimulus around us. So talk to us a little bit about how important it is to cultivate the positive emotions, whether it be through hobbies or pleasurable activities or things that bring us joy.
Huge. I love it. The name of my business, the internal gym. That's working out this first. Before you grow anything else, you have to grow the way that you think. And so what we do are exercises of the mind. One of the most important things that I would always recommend, we've already mentioned meditation, right? And the importance of that, but gratitude. Gratitude, the effects of gratitude are incredible. It's a magic pill. It's literally the silver bullet. It's powerful. When you're grateful, you cannot be worried. Oil and water doesn't happen. When you're grateful, you're thinking about good things that have happened in your life. When you're grateful, you're focusing on what's right. That is the perfect platform to start your day. But if you wake up thinking about deadlines, thinking about problems, thinking about yesterday or thinking about tomorrow, you're starting off in a hole. Gratitude is by far one of the most important things for me. I have to go through my gratitude list every morning. When I'm with my clients on our calls, we go through gratitude. When I'm working with organizations, I don't care how cheesy you think it is. The research on it is insane. It increases your sleep. It decreases your cortisol levels, increases oxytocin. It increases your risk-taking ability. Your courage increases. Like all of a sudden, when you're grateful, you see all the good that already exists. It's a form of becoming rich without having to add anything to your life. You start to notice. Case in point, another way to be grateful is when things are taken away. You're like, man, I didn't know how much I needed that, how much I liked that. Our freedom to move around in the world, we took for granted. But guess how much gratitude we'll have as soon as they open things back up and we're back to normal, right? So gratitude is a massive, massive thing to engage in for sure. Your own internal self-development, courses, coaches, training, consulting, all these things are really good for building up your mind. And one of the most important thing too is resilience. And resilience is I guess you could say it's the essence. We're talking about roadmaps to resilience. It's the essence of the work that we do. It's understanding that I am not a slave to the circumstances that are around me. That if something falls, it doesn't mean I fall. I can pivot, I can move, I can adjust. I will exist beyond this situation. And when you have that perspective, your resilient levels shoot through the roof. Secret is we're all adaptable. As humans, there's something called hedonic adaptation. I don't care how nice of a car I drive. I don't care how beautiful and how expensive it is. After about 2 to 3 months, it's just a car. The only time that I remember that it's nice is if somebody else comments on it, right? Hedonic adaptation proves that humans are able to adapt. And so just naturally understanding that what you feel right now in 2 weeks won't be the same. That your brain will find a way to adapt. And a lot of people have been already talking about this. The first 2 weeks are like, yeah, vacation. Week 3, week 4, they're like, oh my God, get me out of my house. Week 5, week 6, they're like, I'm not even worried about my friends or what they're doing. I don't have FOMO. All of a sudden you start to adapt. And that's something that's natural to us. So embrace it and then add a little bit of gratitude.
That's really important. So I also read a strategy of creating a bucket list of emotionally uplifting activities and then doing them, right? Because we all have bucket lists and we're in this time. So you either get better or better. You can either rise or lower. We can either get, better in our skill sets or worse. And I imagine if we had some an existing bucket list of, boy, if someday I'd like to go do that. It seems to me that if we can identify those uplifting activities in the bucket list form and go do it, it really sort of contribute to a more healthy, happy emotional state.
So real. I'm doing growth projects right now. So I have a group, Thrive 19, and it's kind of like thriving during COVID-19. And really what the group is about is how do you get people to engage? They're all talking to each other and they're sending out positive messages just so it's a good news platform. And also I'm giving education on how to figure out what growth project you want to work on. A lot of times what happens is people are like, I want to change this. It's like, no, if I throw 100 marbles and say catch them all, you catch nothing. But if I say just catch one, you'll focus and grab it. And so trying to find out what is it? Okay, what in this space, in this time, what do I want to focus on? What do I want to grow in? For me, there's kind of 3 areas that I'm growing, right? One is putting out content because I really feel a need to help people and provide content that is supportive during this time. That's huge. Second is my body. I want to work out for my body. This is for every part of my body, my respiratory, my cardiovascular, my muscular, aesthetically as well as healthy, so that I can, if something were to happen, I can be at my top physical form. Another is a language. I'm learning French. I used to take French back in the day. And now I'm like, okay, I want to get back into it. And this is kind of the turn your brain off of work and focus on something that's a totally different part of my mind. And so these growth projects are totally encouraging me because I have something to look forward to that's in different dynamics of my life.
It's interesting. You mentioned also about grit, and I think grit is really important in these times. Doing that, maybe at some level, it's stoicism. You have to be stoic. You have to show grit. You have to be intentional. It's not the end of the world if you choose it not to be, unless you have COVID and debilitating secondary issues, maybe.
Right.
But for most people, it won't be. So the idea for me for grit is really the ability to pursue with determination long-term goals. Really looking at choosing the hard right over the easy wrong. So when we think about building ourselves, whether it's learn a new language, what are some things in your mind where we can start to establish grit and a self-identity that's sort of built in those hard things that we're doing to develop our skills and our person long-term?
Right. There's something I call thought seeds. When I was teaching at Berkeley, I was teaching on these lists of thought seeds that if you plant them into your brain over time, they grow and become your character. One of the thought seeds to build grit is to believe that there's always a way. When you think there's always a way, then you'll find a way no matter what. When most people would give up, you would keep pushing on, right? This is a thought seed that is extremely important. Another one is if better is possible, good is not enough. If better is possible, good is not enough. That's my definition of excellence. And so if I have that thought seed in my head, if I know that better is possible, then I'll continue moving forward. Right. And so the question is, what are the thought seeds? What are the quotes? What are the small phrases that if you planted into your mind and into your heart that would make you work at a higher level for a longer period of time? Right. I love what you said. What was the phrase that you said? You said a hard right is better than an easy wrong.
Yeah, it's choosing the hard right over easy wrongs. I mean, the easy way out could feel good. It goes back to what I call the monkey brain, right? The limbic rich sort of life. And to me, it's like early on when I was younger, about 18, I was learning to fly planes out of John Wayne Airport. And I remember I was flying downwind, which is, you take off, you can visualize the runway as your plane's flying downwind from where you took off. I was just going downwind, and they extended me, and it was by Tustin Air Station, where they have those big dirigible hangars.
Right.
And I remember at that moment I'm flying, and I realized, gee, if I can do this, I can do anything. Now, I don't believe I can do anything because I don't have the skill sets to be an Einstein mathematician. But what it was teaching me is grit and determination, that you go through something that seems impossible when you're 18 to fly a plane at some level, and
Right.
you go do that by yourself. It sort of then extended to other areas of my life. So it's choosing the hard things. I'm not saying the dangerous things. I'm not saying things that will put your health and your life and your body and your persons and your family at risk. I'm talking about things you don't believe you can do, whether it be a physics class or flying or pick whatever it may be. And choosing those hard things over the easy things, because that really starts to develop character and your sense of self and how you see yourself. Because you know better than all of us that in this world, as we go through all this work, boy, is it important who we bring in our life. Boy, is it important who we surround ourselves with.
Yes.
Because it can destroy all the work you're doing. And boy, is it important, because some people will be jealous of your success or your grit and your determination and your mental makeup. And they don't want to see that success unless they're having it. So, so that, to me, choosing the hard right over the easy wrong will always stand the test of time, no matter what hits you, because you know your mettle and what you're made of. And you're going to go back to those points in time where you said, I was that person that did that. I was able to overcome that massive, huge, whatever in my mind, that hill, that mountain, and go through it successfully. So that was sort of the idea.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And it's so funny. When I, like, one of my first sessions that I do with my clients just ties so much. You literally, I can encapsulate that and just put it on the video that I have for my clients. But really what it is that ability to overcome, to break through, gives us a template on how to break through again. When I work with my clients, we talk about one of their breakthrough moments. I just say, you've done this before. That's the first thing I say. They start working. They're like, hey, I want to change my behavior. I want to change this. I want to grow in these areas. I want to gain confidence here. I say, you've done this before. And so I ask, when you had a situation that was negative and then you had a breakthrough that went up and all of a sudden moved you to a different level, tell us the story. So they tell me the story of how nervous or afraid they were. They talked about how difficult it was to gain the courage to break up or gain the courage to quit the job. And then finally they had this moment of breakthrough. And when they had that breakthrough, they felt this kind of like, I felt euphoric. I felt hopeful. I felt excited. I felt engaged. And you're just saying, okay, so you've done it before. Let's find out, what are your recipes? Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, because this can be picked up and placed in any area of your life. Just as you learning to fly, you're like, okay, there's a similar set of steps or recipe that I can use in this next situation that I'm coming from or coming to. And also what I say is that if you have an obstacle that's this big and you're this big, as soon as you jump over it, you're as big as that obstacle was. And so ultimately over time, it's the same jump that's happening over and over again. It's just you get bigger and the obstacle gets bigger. So it's not that things are necessarily getting harder. It's that you're getting stronger. And when you have that shift of mindset, all of a sudden you're able to do things you thought you couldn't do. That's a thought seed. That's something that you can keep. And when you embody it, just like you said, you've picked it up and you've put that same situation in things that have nothing to do with flying, and it pushes you to that next level to make that hard right.
Yeah, that's a good point, because what it does also is it develops a standard in your mind's eye. This is how I see myself. This is the standard.
Huge.
Anything less than that, you're not going to be comfortable with. You're never going to be at a point where you're steady state and everything's good, because there's that little small voice in your head saying, you know what, you could be more, you could do more, you can push it more. Not for the intrinsic value of ego. To me, it's never been about that. It's about, if God's put you on this planet, if you believe in God, and you're here to go do something, and you're here to max your potential, it's in that framework that I think about things. And so in life, we know that there's planned and unplanned circumstances and events that we can't control. But what we can control is that grit and that development of a mindset, mental toughness, a history and a pattern that we can share with ourselves to say, I've done this, this, and this. I can take on this next big giant in my mind's eye. Because that's, one could say, well, it's between the ears, but there are some big giants out there, whether it be health of a loved one or loss of a job, which there's going to be so many stories with COVID replete with all these things. And I think it's an opportunity for people right now to say, you know what, in this time, we know, look, even after COVID, there's going to be seriously huge challenges for our country,
Right.
for this state, for people. And if we know that life is full of a series of challenges, it's not like, hey, I met Berké and he gave me these strategies and I'm good. Because if I met you 20 years from now, Berké, you're going to say, Ben, what'd you learn from that? And then you're going to see a whole different person, a whole different evolution, if you will, of a person. So I think this is the time to say, wait a minute, going through COVID's taught me one thing. It's tough emotionally. And if I'm not willing to step up to the rigors of what we're experiencing and I collapse like a wallflower, that's not where I want to be, because I'm going to get into drugs, alcohol, all kinds of crazy behavior, which further compounds what I'm dealing with. So to me, again, when I went back as a young pup at 18 flying, it was never about, hey, look at me, this is impressive. It was all about how hard and far can I push myself to limits that I never thought I could get to. That's it.
Powerful, man. It's such a great question and a great analogy. This time, this pressure cooker is really where it's a huge determining factor of what the future of people are going to look like. Because literally this is what's about to happen. Though everything was stable and then there was instability, and now there's this separation that's happening. Which direction are you going to go? And there are just small choices that you need to make in this moment. The ones that I'm going to survive this, and I'm not only going to survive, I'm going to thrive. I need to overcome fear, not say get rid of it, overcome it, be more powerful than it. And when you make that subtle adjustment, you times that by a lifetime, it's a totally different human being, 100% new person. And
I love that analogy. That's powerful.
Yeah.
One analogy we use in flying is,
Yeah.
you're flying and you have a compass. And 1 degree, if I'm 1 degree off going to San Diego, to the right is I'm flying south at 180 degrees on a compass, and I'm, let's say, at 182. I'll end up over the Pacific, and I'll never reach that destination called San Diego. And so the idea is it's a small degree course correction in your life, certainly within COVID, to say, what, all I need to do is 1 degree. Because I think a lot of people look at their life and say, man, where do I start? Where do I begin? And the reality to what you just said is, hey, man, it's just one little change that adds up to a lifetime of a fundamentally different person. And it goes at the top of what you're saying, which I think is just spot on, about meditation and habits and routines, and starting to develop that person that can take advantage of that slight change you're making, knowing that as you go forward in time, you're going to build on those experiences, because life's just full of slight changes.
Ooh. Yeah, and you would know better than I. They say like a jetliner is off course 90% of the time, right? It's just constantly course correcting. It's this ability for us to be okay. A lot of people, especially my clients, are first starting, like, okay, I want to know what I want to do, and I want to know right now. And I'm like, well, you don't have enough information. Your job is just to know enough to take the first step. That's all we need to do. Just know enough to take that first step. And one of the things that's so powerful is to understand that our relationship, the first family, this is what I call the first family, is our past self, our present self, and our future self. That is our first family. Before we think about the ones we love and everything, if this family is chaotic, if there is no state of union, then there cannot be a state of union out there. If I'm the one that sets the alarm and in the morning I'm the one that hits snooze, there's discord, right? And then my future self running late is mad at the snooze person. So all of a sudden the family is not in conjunction. They're not engaged. And what ultimately is happening is I say to my clients, I say, when you become the person you want to be, that superhero will have to bow to you right now. And you think you're the problem. They have to bow to you and say, thank you for your grit, your hard work, your sweat and tears to make me what I am. Yeah. Because we look up at that person as though they're the ones that are going to do everything, but they are the birth of your hard work and suffering right now. And so when I talk with my clients or my organizations, when I say, you're the one that is the superhero, building the superhero. Your engagement and your ability to fight, to push through that pressure cooker, to push through your fears, to meditate, to stick to that routine even when you don't want to. That fight is what builds the superhero that you want to be. So you're the one that's the superhero at the end of the day. And that's one of the most important that people need to realize. When you swallow that, all of a sudden you're like, okay, it's not about getting there. It's about doing what I need to do now. Because when I get there, then my superhero can handle it to set it up for the next superhero.
Man, I love that analogy, Berké. That's powerful, the family. It kind of reminds me, I saw this quote one time of 1 foot in the past, 1 in the future. And the past is already gone, right? And the future is not here yet. There's only one moment for you to live, and that's in the present moment. So we could have 1 foot in the past, 1 foot in the future, and it's really present. I remember I was with my fiance riding a bike, and we're on this hill, right? And you can look at the top of the hill, and this is what I've done my whole life. And you look at the top of the hill and you're like, whoa, that's a long ways to go. My body's feeling it. And can I make it? Versus I just look straight down at the road ahead of me, and
Right.
it's 1 foot pedal over another foot
Right.
pedal. And all of a sudden you look up and you're there. And I remember there was times in college and I was doing ROTC at the same time, and the schedule was so maxed out that all I could do was look at the next test I had to take, the next class I had to go, and whatever next thing I had to do in ROTC to be whatever I needed to become, right? And so it's really living in the present, because that's the present. All we know is right here and now.
Mm-hmm.
But everything you're saying is so important, because to build an epic present and a hope-filled future, it really starts with how you're developing yourself. And I don't think that's not, if you will, it's not emphasized enough. I think a lot of times we live in this culture that, whether it be fast food restaurants or fast food relationships or fast food apps, fast apps to make you feel a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
It's really missing the broader point. To develop the full potential of a person, it takes time and intention. And especially when you're going through stress, it takes a lot more intention. And again, I go back to whoever you bring in that ride with you is so vital, because they could be the difference between you making it or you having a big drogue chute on your back trying to run a 40-yard dash, right? Imagine trying to go up against Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
You got this big chute in your back, and not only is he faster, but a lot of people kind of going with that baggage. And I don't know, I think that's really important in these times. For me, it's about riding the bike, working out, staying very focused on a routine, and choosing, right? Because I think you can choose to be in love with somebody or out of love with somebody.
Right.
You can choose a lot of things, but it's really choosing how I'm going to look at the world and protecting my mind from all the negativity in the news. And I would argue that, while news is interesting, I don't know if it's always helpful, because there's absolutely an agenda with the national news, especially in a political season. There's an agenda. And so what you hear, you have to consider at least some percentage of it is probably agenda based and probably not true. But yet the impact it has on people and their emotions is extreme.
Man, it's so, what I always, and I love the word that you said with agenda, always ask, what is the object of this information being put out? When you're on television, it's viewership. And if it's viewership, then you must get views. That's why clickbait is clickbait. That's why sensationalism is required, because they have to emotionally stir something in you. They have to disrupt your flow. Just in general, it's the nature of the industry. Same with advertisement. They have to make you feel less in order to want to consume more. That's requirement. It's embedded into the system. And so when we think of it that way, then the question is, okay, okay. They're reaching out to me with their agenda in mind. How do I reach out with my agenda in mind? What do I search for that can give me the flow that I want? People just listening to this, what we're talking about, this is good information that goes in and it feeds you to build you to want to become better. It doesn't make you want to lock up and go into a corner. Really finding out what your news sources are. And when I say news sources, I'm saying information just in general. It could be even time with your child. That's a good news source. I'm saying that there's everything is constantly new. So why don't you choose the new that builds you up, that evolves you? At the end of the day, everything that I see is in here. It's my interpretation. So why would I allow somebody else to interpret for me what it is? I interpret for myself, for my own betterment, for my own family, starting with my first family, moving out to my external family, right? Then you move out to the public, into the world.
So powerful. It's interesting about agendas. And, I was listening to something where, in Hollywood is embedded the CIA, and people be shocked at that. But when you think about the military, the CIA, and what they do on a global scale is misinformation, controlling the narrative, just like China's doing, just like the US is doing. There's a narrative that you're trying to control. And within Hollywood, and it's been documented, the CIA has been very, very involved, right? So when you think about Hollywood is all about movies and emotions and standards and lifestyle and values, right? And music is the same way. And music brings a lot of pleasure. However, when you think about the artists and what they're singing about, I would argue that it's also a trigger for a lot of people to get them stuck in those times that were happy at certain levels, but turned out to be a nightmare at many other levels. And I'm not saying that music is bad. I'm just saying it's a reality, that it's programming, and the music that's sung and what connects people to the music is a trip down memory lane of what was lost, about what was special is no longer. And to stay in the present and to be the best, highest performing person you can be, one has to look at that, is all I'm saying. What you're digesting from a movie, from a music standpoint, from whatever it is, because it's going to affect your psyche and your ability to manage and deal with your stress. It's like, as I mentioned before, if I got a foot in the past of a relationship that didn't work out, that parts of it were amazing, but again, you're not in it any longer. So parts of it weren't so amazing.
Right.
And I'm stuck there. It's really hard to move forward. It's really hard to take on bigger, bolder challenges and stressful situations. So I just think that from a society standpoint, we have to understand that there's a lot of intentional programming going on from the federal government level to anybody with the show at some level, to anybody trying to communicate and drive ratings at other levels.
Right.
And as long as we're mindful of it and we're aware of it and we're signing up with that understanding, okay, fine. But if you're kind of going in there like, da, 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 and then you're wondering why you're sort of stuck in this place,
Right.
just consider what your mental appetite is and what you're feeding it.
So real, man. The way that I always bring it down to the simplest point is build and strengthen your guidance system.
Oh, that's good.
Us have a guidance system. And the reason that we get sucked into all of these things and everybody has these ideas, and this is the reason that there's such this polarity in our society, is because we're listening to others' guidance systems and then attaching it to our own. And then we think that it's ours. That's where that sense of purpose, when I was talking about those three things, a sense of relatedness can be dangerous, because sometimes we relate and find purpose in something that's not really actually our guidance system. If it makes me feel anger consistently, is it a healthy guidance system? Whether, I don't care what side you're on, if it makes you feel joy, then that's something that you need to take into account. And so what I say is, my work is not to get anybody to see any perspective. My work is, how do I get you to fall into your guidance system? And when you say, what brings me bliss and joy? What makes me smile? What triggers me for good, then triggers me for frustration, triggers me for, oh, this person can't see, or this person can see, or you're of my tribe and you're not. Those are triggers of the limbic mind. If I can get to a space of, what does my guidance system say? When I listen to this song, what do I feel? Well, I really like the beat, but what do the lyrics do to me? What do the lyrics do to me? When you start to ask those questions, then all of a sudden your guidance system has a stronger voice. And when it has a stronger voice, then you can grab onto its tail and it'll tell you where to go. But the first job is to dig through all the dirt of what society has told us is important, is good, is bad, is right, is wrong, is sided, is not, to get to your guidance system. And then when you have that, you hold on like hell, because that's when all of a sudden you will blossom and you will no longer deal. I love this quote. It says, small minds talk about people. Mediocre minds talk about events and situations. Great minds talk about ideas. Yeah. And ideas are not threats. To talk against an idea is not talking about an idea. That's talking about an event. If I'm talking against an idea, saying that my idea is better than your idea, I'm not speaking of ideas. Ideas are constant blossoming. They move up and out towards the sky. They build, they uplift. And so getting people to be able to speak from that space of ideas. And if somebody disagrees with my idea, that's them in their universe. If all of a sudden society and the media is telling me about this other idea, what is my idea and how do I hold to it? If there's things that I like from it, I'll pick them and I'll put them up, but I'll never attach myself to them. That's where you gain power.
I love that analogy of a guidance system. That really rings true, whether it be in a missile or whatever. Guidance systems are pretty important to be on target of where you want to end up. And I like the other part you just said about, what you're allowing to come in terms of your orbit, your universe, and the satellites we talked about in our first podcast together.
Right.
Boy, that's a great analogy, because I think it's really important to be able to share ideas and not get shot down, because ultimately, I come from a scientific background where you have to have statistical significance, a big retrospective, prospective study to understand is something real, like the debate about hydrochloroquine, right? Does it work or doesn't it work? And by the way, you can manipulate the data any way you want it, depending on what base you want to be on. 100%. But traditionally, the scientific method is a good way to go forward, because it takes away the subjectivity of whatever you're looking at. But in reality is, for most of our lives, we're looking at life through our prism and through our own subjective experiences. So it's really an opportunity to sit back and say, look, here's what I think the idea should be, but be open to consider other ideas, because just like running a business, it's not about a hero like Bill Gates that was so smart that he led the pack. No, in reality, Bill Gates was smart, Steve Jobs was smart, but he had a ton of equally smart people right behind him creating the magic, right? And with their ideas, they built the company. It wasn't one idea that from 78 to now was the same idea. It's new ideas coming in when there's new data and you see shifts in the markets and the trends. So boy, is that important if we can have that perspective. And that way we can divorce ourselves from our ego and our position and say, wait a minute, if the goal is to learn and become smarter, more intelligent beings, you got to listen to everybody, right? I mean, maybe certain people say, well, you know, he's a serial murderer. Okay, fine. Maybe you can learn a lesson from that guy too.
You
always learn a lesson, right?
This is
but I'm saying on the balance, you want to make sure your mindset is, hey, I can learn from this person. I can grow from this person. And you know what? Maybe it's uncomfortable and I don't agree with the perspective, but so what? It's
powerful.
An opportunity to grow and expand your database, if you will.
Yeah. It's so interesting. I think you really nailed the heart of the fight between the ego and the higher self. Our fear of being wrong, we tie our identities to our ideas, right? And if someone attacks my idea, they're attacking me, right? All of a sudden I take it personal. And if I can separate, that's what I love about science. Science is constantly trying to disprove theories. It's spending more time trying to see how wrong it is than to prove how right it is. And if we can come to a space where for me, I've taught myself to get excited about being wrong. Like something else, because the truth is there is more that I don't know and even more that I don't know. That's the fact. What I know is a flame in pure darkness. And if it's brighter than somebody else's candle, it's irrelevant because the darkness is so great. The unknowing is so great. And so when I allow myself to constantly understand that I know I don't know, and I don't even know what I don't know, then all of a sudden I'm constantly seeking, where could I be wrong? And not I own wrong, but where could a perspective be flawed? And how can I adjust it and move and evolve? If I'm agreeing with myself a year from now, 2 years from now, 10 years from now, I think I'm not doing something right. And so the constant evolution is the internal. This is where I'm moving. This is what I'm focusing on. Everybody else's ideas I take in, but I take it into my own research, my own study, and my own guidance system, and I move from that space. That freedom from detaching from being right or wrong to asking what's right, what's better, what in the end is building us up. And even if I am right, if it costs me the relationship, is it worth it? You know, in relationships, one of my mentors a long time ago goes, you can either be right or you can have a good relationship. You choose. Sometimes being right shouldn't be the end goal. If you're Batman and justice is all that matters, then you have to be willing to lose people. But if you care about relationships more, then you're willing to subdue those ideas because the idea of love is more important to you. Clarity on what's important is everything.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure it's mutually exclusive when it comes to relationships. You can still have your ideas and yet be mindful to say, this is valuable in context. This is important to protect. And while I can have these ideas, I understand what this brings to my life and how it's sort of an undergirding and a foundational element so I can be this thing. And I like what you have to say, because boy, I think the trick to being happiest and happy in life is growth.
Yes.
And I'm not talking, waistline. I'm not talking
right.
As a person, you say, you know what? A year ago, I'm totally different. I've taken steps to better myself and learn and learn and learn. And your analogy of, you're a candlelight in the darkness. As we get older, I would argue, like a black hole, that darkness is ever expanding and just gets bigger. The older I get, the more I realize I don't know, and it's humbling. And it's kind of humorous when you get around CEOs who are really successful and people that know their craft, and they've got this oversized ego, but you go talk about other elements, they kind of look at you like, what? And so check the ego, man. Get over it. And if you really want to be happy in life, it's about continual, unending improvement and growth. Because I would argue people that suffer from suicide, people that are in that mindset in that way, they've completely limited their view of themselves and their idea of what they could be. And they're trapped in a time. They're trapped in an event. And they can't go beyond that event. And it's the antithesis of growth. And I would argue that if you can expand the mind and certainly take stock of maybe what got you that thinking, the suicidal thoughts, and this isn't to minimize it, because I've known people that have taken that unmistakable act, but the point is we have a limited mindset. We're in that way. We're selfishly thinking about the issues. We're myopic in looking at those issues. And the opportunity is to really say, from a growth perspective, how can I recast how I currently see the world? How can I recast this event? And by the way, there's dogma that plays, right? You have people coming from these families, these Judeo-Christian, hard-edged, legalistic families. You kiss the boy, you did this, you're going to hell. And they actually believe it.
Right.
And that's their belief system. And that is completely nuts. And I would say to people that, hey, if you're in that way, who says what those people say or share with you or their dogma is truth? The only way you know is you have to go explore, which is what you're saying, Berké. You got to go and expand. You have to sort of touch on everything and challenge every thought that you believe in. Because what's killing people is limited beliefs from somebody else, which you said earlier. That's certainly not helpful. But if you can simply say, my job is always to be a change agent and grow no matter what. And anytime something's coming in that's negative, that hits me emotionally, that destroys me emotionally, you got to look at that. That's not real, and that's not helpful. And that's just a person's opinion. And don't give it so much weight, and continue to reach out, open-mindedly explore.
Right. It's powerful, man. I love this. And I feel that, it's cool because as we have this power and this engagement to evolve and to grow, one of my professors at Cal, Dr. Keltner, at the end of this guy he's incredible psychologist. He does a lot of positive psychology and understanding just the human nature of how we're just born to be good. That's one of his books. But at the end of the whole course, what he said is, he goes, if you remember anything from this class, my main thing that I want you to get out of this is don't take yourself so seriously. And I feel like that's always the cherry on top of all the work that I do and all the pontification, and all the research and all the science and all the ideas and all the coolness or all the craziness or all the intensity. At the end of the day, if we don't take ourselves so serious, we just won't be as triggered by our own actions or the actions of others, by our situations, both externally and internally. And that freedom, and it comes with age for most people. As they get older, they're like, why did I care so much about what they thought? But to be able to magnify it on a large scale, exponentially, to where I'm not taking myself so seriously. The work that I do, I care about. And I want to make a massive impact in the world. But at the same time, I'm not going to take it so seriously. That gets me to do two things. One is I get to make an impact, and I get to love my life at the same time. Right. And that's what, when we talked before, I talked about the work-life fusion, where it's not a balance of one for the other. It's they're one. And what I must have is a life that I love while making an impact that I love to have. And when they come together, that's when I have freedom. So no matter how opinionated I am, no matter how many ideas I have, at the end of the day, I don't take myself that seriously. And I constantly remind myself that as important as this stuff is, it's not that important.
No, I think it's critical to have that perspective, because we're not getting out of this place alive. There's death and taxes. Those two absolute things are going to happen. And if we could have that perspective, in other words, if you could have the perspective of when you're 80 now, imagine what your life would be like. And the question is, how do you get to that perspective of an 80-year-old who has really developed that brain, that cranium, that skull full of mush to the highest level? How can you get to that point now, or at least be moving on that trajectory to have that perspective? Because really it's the perspective that gives you the joy. If I have the wrong perspective, I'll never have joy, no matter how many psychologists I went to, therapists I went to, because all I'm going to do is keep repeating the same stupid mistakes over and over and over again. And the idea of growing and looking at life differently. And, by the way, and you mentioned this, hey, so what, you had a setback. So what, you made a mistake. Celebrate that.
Right.
Embrace it, because that's like a PhD. Even though we don't have the awards and the documents that go with it, I got it.
Right.
Like, hey, you know what? That's like a PhD, level education. Whether it's a relationship that did not work out that you really wanted to work out,
right?
You learned a lot from it, or the job that you didn't get, or the job you did get. Right. Sometimes you get a job and you get the job and you're like, is this really a fit for me?
This is what I want.
So, boy, everything's an opportunity to grow and learn. And if we could have that perspective, like it's not the end of the world when our expectation, our blueprint, our roadmap didn't work out. It's actually just the beginning of you evolving as a person, the way that God or whatever you believe in intended.
Yeah. There's something just so powerful about evolution. Your ability to change. Somebody was asking, what's one of the things that you're most grateful for? I'm grateful for the fact that what I start as, I don't have to be forever. Like that, not only social, economic mobility, but I'm talking the fact that my body can be shaped a certain way. and I can work out and I can change it. That my mind can think a certain way and I can work on it and change it. That if I meditate, I can open up the way that I see the world. That if I just look at something and then shift my perspective, a whole new thing shows up. And when that whole new thing shows up, I then can act completely different to it and then create out of nothing something. That human ability to evolve, that ability to grow, that ability to be better than I was when I started, bro, above everything is the cool. It makes every second living so incredible. Because if I was just this and destined to be that, then I'd be bored. But it's this crazy, chaotic experience of life that we have, and our ability to flex, move, adapt, trip, fall, get up, build, connect, meet new relationships, break from those relationships, whether beautifully or chaotically, and still constantly evolve. That is the game of life. You know, a quote that I always say, that what if you lived your life as if goals were just excuses for adventure? Like if goals were just excuses for adventure, then all of a sudden I wouldn't be afraid of not meeting a goal, because just setting the goal gives me the impetus to act, to exist, to show up, to experience this adventure. Even pain becomes a valuable experience. I'd rather go to a country and despise it than not know ever what that country is like, because it adds to my map of experiences. And this ability for us to do that, to evolve and to grow and to see the world in a different way, just by changing our perspectives or changing the relationships that we have, just by making these crazy adjustments, is one of the most insane and beautiful things that we have here.
100%. You know, this is like a flow we got going here in this show, and I love it. And, you know, we're really excited about this series, Roadmaps to Resilience. And I think you really bring a lot of phenomenal insight. Is there anything you want to leave with the audience as we sort of close down here? Any final thoughts or points?
Yeah, man, I'd say again, it all starts with your routine. When you, and I said this the last time too, and I want to we can provide some sources, you know, for people. We can put like a website up or something. Just, I have my you know, berkebrown.com/thrive, but just sources to be able to clarify what your day is going to look like. You know, I said this last time, I said all the grand things we want to do all comes down to homework tonight. What can we do right now that can make small adjustments in our lives? If there's something in your head that you just want to start doing more, if it's, I want to wake up early, if it's, I want to meditate, if it's whatever it is that's important to you, just do one thing different this week and focus on that one thing and make sure that you get it done. And then from there, add that next Lego piece. Because when your routine is set, then all of a sudden you have cognitive space to then sit back and say, wow, since I've been doing that, what else can I do? Exactly like you with flying the plane. When you were flying that plane, you're like, oh my gosh, if I can do this, I can do anything. And that's all we care about. Your confidence in your ability to do what you say you're going to do is what determines how successful you'll be in life. And it all starts with just building a routine.
That's great advice, Berké. I really appreciate it. So to the Beyond audience, Roadmaps to Resilience, Berké's been kind enough to come on a routine basis to really share his research, his study, and his expertise. Really can impact organizations, personal lives. Berkebrown.com. Make sure you look him up, and we're looking forward to having Berké on next Monday. Thanks, Berké.
Hey, thanks so much, man. It was a great time.